I woke up during surgery, unable to move. And the doctors were talking about me like I wasn't human. The first thing I noticed was the smell of coffee. Not a hospital disinfectant. Not antiseptic. Coffee. Burnt coffee. The kind that's been sitting on a hot plate too long in a waiting room nobody wants to be in. And I remember thinking that was strange, because I still couldn't open my eyes properly. I couldn't move my hands, couldn't move my mouth. And somewhere underneath the panic, underneath the noise of my own heartbeat, I understood exactly what had happened. The anesthetic hadn't worked properly. I was awake. And then someone near my head said,
Begin while he's still aware. Not begin the procedure, not increase sedation. Begin. Like whatever they were about to do needed me conscious for it. You know that moment when your body wakes up before your brain catches up? Imagine the opposite.
I'm not the kind of person who tells stories like this. I install commercial refrigeration systems for supermarkets and petrol stations. That's my actual job. Compressors, pipe work, freezer units that leak coolant at 3 in the morning because somebody ignored the maintenance schedule again. My life is mostly service calls and motorway coffee, and keeping invoices folded in the passenger seat until they start looking soft around the edges. I had surgery in October last year. Minor thing, supposed to be routine. A laparoscopic procedure to investigate abdominal pain that turned out later to be stress-related anyway. That's important, because medically speaking, there was almost nothing wrong with me. The surgery was scheduled unusually fast. That was the first thing my girlfriend noticed. NHS referrals usually drag. Private hospitals drag less, but still, this moved like somebody had already decided where I'd be and when. I remember the admissions nurse had a tiny plaster on her thumb shaped like a cartoon frog. I remember because she kept smoothing paperwork with that thumb while explaining the consent forms. And I remember the coffee machine in pre-op making this choking sound every 30 seconds like it was trying not to die.
Little things stay with you. The operation was scheduled for 2 a.m. They told me it was because the surgical suite was available overnight due to scheduling overflow. That sounded reasonable at the time. Hospitals run all hours. I signed the forms. I changed into the gown. I remember the anesthetist asking what music I liked while attaching monitors to my chest. Normal small talk. Human. Forgettable. And then he said something odd. Not alarming. Just odd. He said, "You may experience awareness during transition. Don't resist it."
I thought he meant dreams. If this is your first time here, stay. This story earns it. These are the kinds of things that don't make sense, until suddenly, they do. I woke up before the surgery started. At least, I think I did. It's difficult to explain because I couldn't open my eyes fully. My body was paralyzed, but my hearing was perfect. Better than perfect, actually. Every sound felt sharpened. The rustle of gowns, metal instruments touching trays, someone breathing through their nose behind a mask. And underneath all that, whispering. Not panicked whispering, not urgent, rhythmic, measured, like people reading instructions aloud. I told myself there was a rational explanation. Hospitals do procedural checks before surgery. Teams confirm names, medications, and operation sites. That's normal. Then somebody near my feet said, Has the witness been prepared? Witness. Not patient. Witness. I remember my mouth going dry instantly. Not metaphorically, physically. My tongue felt stuck to the roof of my mouth, and I tried to move my fingers, and nothing happened. Then came the false scare. Something metal clattered beside me, hard. My entire body locked inside itself, waiting for something. And someone laughed quietly and said, "Sorry," dropped the clamp. Normal. Ordinary. For about 5 seconds, I convinced myself I was having anesthesia delirium. People hallucinate under sedation. I know that now because I've spent 6 months reading every medical paper I can find, trying to explain this away. Then somebody turned off the overhead music, and the room became completely silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence where everybody in the room already knows what comes next. I couldn't see clearly, but I could hear movement around the table. Not surgical movement, circular movement, like people walking slowly around me. I remember counting footsteps, because counting felt like the only thing my brain could still control. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Then again. I know how this sounds. I know exactly how this sounds. I spent months telling myself I misunderstood what I heard, that paralytics mixed with sedation had distorted time, language, and memory into something ugly. But memory gets sharper when you replay it enough, not softer. One of them said, "The building recognizes him." Another voice answered, "It recognized the last one too." The last one. I tried opening my eyes wider, and for a second I managed it. Just a fraction. Enough to see masks, gowns, dimmed lights around the room, and standing near the wall, not participating, just watching, a man in a dark suit with no surgical gear at all, no gloves, no mask, holding a folder against his chest, like an administrator observing an audit. That detail bothers me more than anything else, not because it was frightening, because it was ordinary. Hospitals are full of administrators. The glitch moment came maybe 30 seconds later, or 10 minutes. Time doesn't work properly in memory after trauma. A woman's voice near my head said, "Rotate the table." And I felt the operating table move, not tilt, rotate, slowly, in a full circle. Operating tables do not rotate completely. I checked afterward. I checked the manufacturer specifications for that exact model. They physically cannot do that. And this is the point where I need you to ask yourself something honestly. If you woke up unable to move, surrounded by masked strangers speaking calmly about you like an object, how long would it take before you stopped believing you were going to wake up safely?
Then came the sentence I still hear when the house is quiet enough. One of them said, "He's aware enough now." And another voice answered, "Good." Not relieved, pleased. Something touched my hand. Bare skin. No glove. Just fingertips resting lightly against my wrist. And a voice very close to my ear said, "Do not confuse witnessing with understanding." I couldn't breathe properly. Not because the machine stopped, because my body had realized before my brain had. This was never about surgery. The monitor beside me kept beeping. Steady, calm, like my body was cooperating with something my mind still refused to accept. I heard paper turning, reading, not Latin, not chanting, administrative language, dates, names, departments. Like minutes from a meeting, the room was completely silent except for that. Then the same voice said, "The Foundation acknowledges continued occupancy." Occupancy. Not life. Not patient status. Occupancy. I know how this sounds. I know exactly how this sounds. You want the truth? The thing that broke me wasn't fear. It was realizing nobody in that room sounded emotional. No excitement. No madness. Just routine. Like people staying late to finish paperwork. Then somebody said the sentence I still cannot explain. His consent was obtained structurally. Structurally. Not legally, not medically. Structurally. And suddenly I understood something horrible. The surgery itself barely mattered. I think they needed the room. I think they needed the building. And I think they needed somebody conscious enough to witness whatever that process was.
I woke properly in recovery at 5:14 a.m. The nurse told me everything went normally. The procedure notes were almost blank. Minimal findings. Routine discharge. 3 weeks later, the hospital's legal department contacted me after I requested full surgical records. They offered compensation before I even threatened legal action. That's unusual. Very unusual. I refused to sign the NDA. So I started digging. The hospital building was originally funded in 1928 by a private charitable foundation that technically still exists. Same address, same board structure, same family names repeating across generations. One name appeared 4 times, including the surname of the man I saw standing against the wall, holding the folder.
And then I found something else. The operating theater where my surgery happened wasn't part of the original hospital redesign plans. It was preserved separately during renovation, architecturally isolated from the newer structure, like something important had to remain exactly where it already was. If you're still here, you already understand why this story bothered me. Subscribe if you want the next file. I still get follow-up appointment reminders from that hospital. I never attended any of them. But last month, I requested my original consent paperwork again, just to see whether anything had changed. The signature was mine. The date was correct. Everything looked normal, except for one line I swear was not there the night I signed it. Witness acknowledgement confirmed. And the checkbox beside it was already ticked.